Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of 5 Facts. I'm Tony Southcott, and today we're going to be talking about 28 Days Later, the 2002 hit from Danny Boyle. 28 Days Later is a fast zombie movie from director Danny Boyle, who also did Trainspotting, Sunshine, and Slumdog Millionaire. It's also written by Alex Garland, who had just gotten finished working with Danny Boyle on The Beach. It's a gore fest of absolute brutality and horror. It's also one of the first fast zombie movies out there. Return of the Living Dead Part 2 had a little bit of this, but it wasn't nearly as entertaining. That was almost sort of comedic. 15 years later, this still stands as one of the best in the genre. But enough about that, let's get to the facts. Fact number 1, the film has many alternative endings. Anyone who has the Blu-ray for this film probably already knows about the alternate endings that were actually shot, the ones where Jim doesn't make it. This first one was deemed to be a little bit too bleak by audiences, so they went with the one where Jim actually did survive his gunshot wound. There was actually a radically different ending that changed the script from about the midpoint on. In this one, instead of finding the soldiers and basically all the action that happens there, they follow this radio signal and find the scientists who originally created the Rage virus. This is after Frank's been infected. They go to him knowing that he knows how to cure infection, and he tells them that it would take an entire blood transfusion. So basically, Jim sacrifices himself so that Frank can be with his daughter Hannah and Selena, and they can go onward. Danny Boyle said that this wasn't entirely a feasible ending, and that's part of the reason why it went out. They had this one just in case they couldn't get the finances in order to have the movie they really wanted, but they thought that this could be a good ending for it. After thinking about it a little bit, though, they didn't understand how they would be able to get all of the virus out of somebody's system. They can't exactly use bleach on people's blood vessels. Fact number 2. The desolate shots of London took an immense amount of work in a very short period of time. To minimize the amount of time spent disrupting London traffic, the opening shots with Jim were filmed on Sunday mornings at about 45-minute spurts of high-energy filming. The film was one of the first to be shot entirely digitally. It was done using Canon XL1 cameras. This helped the production a lot because they were very small, very maneuverable cameras. It also helped bring that sort of grittiness that you see. Even if you're watching the original DVD versus the Blu-ray and everything, that graininess is still in every shot. In the scene with the overturned double-decker bus, they actually overturned the bus, prepared it for this, and set it all up and got it cleaned up within 20 minutes. They used mobile police blockades on a block-by-block basis to make sure that they could get these scenes to work. Knowing that this would still anger people coming home late from pubs and various clubs, Danny Boyle hired very attractive women to talk to these people who were drunk and heading home to get them alternate routes, to get them cabs and all that, and this actually worked extremely well. Many of these shots were actually filmed before the 9/11 attacks, despite the movie coming out afterwards. It really creeped Danny Boyle out later when he would see the makeshift missing posters set up around New York City. He also wondered if he would have been able to get the permission he needed after 9/11 to actually make these movies, especially for as cheap as they did. This would have been an issue because it's actually blocking off streets in front of Whitehall, which is some of the most important government services and government buildings in the UK. Fact number 3. Boyle and Garland were inspired by the innate fear of a viral apocalypse. The zombie genre has changed a lot over the years. It used to be brains, that got kind of antiquated. It used to be slow, that got kind of antiquated too, and a lot of the same stories ran out. Some of the original zombie films were based on people's fear at the time. Nuclear disasters, more potent drugs, like all sorts of different effects that were happening in society at the time. They decided that this would be a more viral-based zombie epidemic, especially because at the time, Ebola and Marburg were going around and were hot. At the time, this was also the height of the mad cow epidemic that was starting to hit in the UK, which caused a lot of other fears, especially when you heard about what these free prions and everything did to cows. It was sort of a zombie-like effect, especially more towards the rage type thing. They also wanted to experiment with non-undead zombies. They wanted these to be altered humans that were basically falling into their more primal instincts. They were becoming predators, mindless, just overpowering type zombie people, but not quite undead. They felt like it would be based more on the innate rage that people carry within them. Not everyone thinks they're capable of hardcore rage, but you see it with road rage, you see it with mass shootings, you see all this stuff all the time where something just happens and people snap. And they believed that this was innately inside people and that this virus would exploit that. Even the look of the zombies was inspired by real hemorrhagic viruses, most specifically Ebola. The way the eyes would be bloodshot, not the contacts that they add in later, although those are pretty cool. They're talking about the spewing of blood and viscera, just the complete tearing down of a human being. If you really want to have a book that'll keep you up at night, read The Hot Zone and see how close we were to an actual Ebola epidemic in the United States. In the graphic novel 28 Days Later Aftermath, it actually is explained that Ebola was the basis for the virus, but it was used as a carrier for the rage virus. Fact number 4. Danny Boyle was inspired for many iconic scenes by historical shots from photojournalists, news crews, and documentaries. The scene in which Jim sees a dead mother clutching her dead baby was based on images from the Saddam Hussein regime in Iraq gassing the Kurds. When Jim finds money on the steps, it was based on an image shortly after Pol Pot was deposed in Cambodia. In a scene where the group takes cover between windows, the image that inspired that came from a bombing in Northern Ireland. The stacking of bodies in churches was actually inspired from images that came from Rwanda and Sierra Leone during their various massacres. They had the option of using footage from these actual events, but they decided it would be in better taste just to recreate them out of respect for the dead. The scene in which there are photos of the missing placed in Piccadilly Circus was actually based on an earthquake in China. The scene caused a stir because of its close resemblance to the makeshift memorials in New York after the 9/11 attacks. He said that had all this been done beforehand, he wouldn't have even shot the scene. In another odd bit of how this film actually links to the 9/11 attacks, the scene where the group is celebrating was actually shot on 9/11, which made for a very weird set because no one at all felt like celebrating. Fact number 5, popcorn facts. Here's just a bunch of fun little ones from about the movie. Boyle wanted the zombies to be imposing and powerful, so he hired athletes to play the zombies. Anytime they are on screen, their physical prowess is displayed and helps create a terrifying effect. This film was actually shot almost entirely sequentially, except for a couple reshoots that would happen after the film. The Bible verse on the postcard is about the destruction of Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrians. It was entirely destroyed because of the inhabitants' sins. After one of the scenes, the prop department didn't pick up all of their mannequins and corpses, and a woman driving by actually saw this and swerved off the road and had an accident. She called the police, who would spend a good part of the day interrogating the crew about what was on about that. The 1963 film, The Day of the Triffids, gave the basic storyline for the film to Alex Garland. It takes a man who wakes up in a hospital in the post-apocalypse where he missed it because he was unconscious. It has a man in London alone. It has a group of people trying to escape London, and it even has a group of soldiers gone bad. Basically, he took the format and adapted it into a zombie movie. Finally, the primary symbol for the film is the worldwide symbol for bloodborne biohazards. Sometimes I feel like I over-dramatize the importance of a film, but this one holds a special place for me. The name of this channel was inspired by a fast zombie book I wrote in 2011 called Human Echoes. Between it and the Dawn of the Dead remake, it gave me the inspiration I needed to actually finish a novel. It hit me when I was in high school and became one of the most formative movies for my tastes, my style, just basically the aesthetic I look for most in movies. Also, that book is never going to see the light of day. Sorry. Back to the film. This different type of zombie really changed what the genre could do, because before this it was always the slow zombies. It was always just like the same menacing thing, similar stories in just kind of forced out. It didn't have any sort of impact like this movie did. It changed the way zombie movies afterward had to be done. It would take novels like World War Z and the Walking Dead comic books to even get me personally back into any type of slow zombie. And then World War Z decided to make them fast zombies anyway, for the movie at least. Maybe it's just the gritty shots, the altered color palette, the digital film style with a little bit of blur and a little bit of different frame rate issues, but there's just something special about how this movie comes across. It has this sense of dread, this unease that never lets up, and it's only punctuated even more by the music that goes along with it. I believe it was John Murphy who actually did the music for this one and for Sunshine later, and during that end sequence, the music that's on there gives me chills anytime I think about it. There's something so primal about the changes that happen in Jim as well. It's like watching him embody everything that the zombies are, but for a different purpose. Instead of just all-consuming rage and consumption, it's for a sort of love. It's for compassion towards the people that he cares about. He's able to keep his mind because he's fighting for something instead of raging at the night. And that's one of the things I love most about this character, about this entire movie, is that it's a lot deeper than a surface level zombie movie. And then you get the kick-ass, just amazing imagery involved otherwise. It really is a masterpiece from Danny Boyle. And though he's won Oscars for other things like Slumdog Millionaire and everything else, it's one of the most classic horror movies of all time. If you haven't seen it and you made it this far, that's a little bit weird. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you enjoyed watching it, hit that sub button, hit that like button, share it with your friends, all that sort of stuff. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you in 2 weeks.